Hi, my name is Phil Cates. I'm with Michigan State University Extension. I'm the forage educator for Michigan, and we're here on the Hawbaker farm in mid-Michigan getting ready to harvest third cutting alfalfa to determine if wide thin fins will give us hay that is higher in quality and faster drying compared to a conventional haybine without wide thin fins. These wide thin fins are only available on New Holland haybines at this time and can be purchased as a kit and mounted on the new haybines at a fairly reasonable price.
We'll be doing some feed testing to see what these samples end up as, comparing this haybine that does have the wide thin fins compared to a haybine that does not have the wide thin fins. As you can see, these are attached. It's just 2 bolts for each of these, and we'll see as we start the haybine just how wide it throws that hay out, and we're cutting.
Currently, wide thin fins are only available on New Holland haybines and can be purchased as a kit and mounted on your haybine at a fairly reasonable price. Each fin has 2 bolts to mount to the frame, and so you have a total of 4 fins with 2 bolts each. Before we start to mow the hay, it's important to look over the settings of each haybine and adjust the roller crimpers to make sure there's an even crush that takes place on the alfalfa hay. The best crimp will crush the alfalfa stem without pulverizing it, allowing moisture to exit at a faster rate. I have 3 examples taken at the farm. The top pass-through taken on the new haybine shows an even crimp compared to the bottom 2 passes through the older haybine that's been in use several years, and it shows the effect of wear on the rollers. Notice the unevenness of the crimp in the middle pass compared to the more even crimp after adjusting the rollers. One of the primary goals of using a wide thin fin is to spread the hay as wide as you can to approximately 100% of the total width that you are cutting the hay. This wide thin fin effect will provide hay that has the opportunity to have more sunlight hit the leaves and allowing that to have higher quality. As we spread the hay out, you can see that it's as wide as we can possibly get it, but it's still not 100%. We ended up with approximately 80% of the total width of the width of the hay that was being cut using the wide thin fins. Now we're going to compare the older haybine, the older New Holland haybine that does not have the wide thin fins attached, and pay close attention to the way that the hay comes out of the back of the mower as well as the width of the swath. We're still cutting the same width of hay, however the swath is going to be about 65% of the total width compared to about 80% of the total width that we have with the wide thin fins. As you can see, the width of the swath is much more narrow, much denser. Even though there's not the volume that we would normally have with first cutting hay, this third cutting hay still has a difference when you compare the wider swath to the other swath. Each haybine had the opportunity to cut 3 times across the field to provide us with some replicated trial material. We allowed the hay to dry during the day, providing us a chance to see whether the wide, thin fins actually caused the hay to dry faster and have higher quality. Toward the early evening, a wheel rake was used to combine each separate pass that had been cut earlier in the day for each haybine. Each pass of the haybine provided a nice square windrow for the baler. After raking the hay, each of the haybine passes were baled in the high-moisture round bales and sampled with a hay probe. There were 3 replications for each haybine to allow for statistical analysis of the samples following the baling process. The high-moisture hay samples were shipped to a lab in Michigan for wet lab analysis to determine the results for each haybine, the results for dry matter percent, crude protein percent, acid detergent fiber percentage, neutral detergent fiber percentage, relative feed value, and ash percent were all analyzed, and there was no statistical differences found in each of the samples for the haybines. There should be caution in putting too much emphasis on the results from this one cutting for 1 year. This is a long-term project that will be done using multiple cuttings in multiple years.